Head coach Mike Woodson for Indiana basketball is making terrible coaching decisions right now.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. I appreciate you being here every day. I appreciate you all, you everydayers, man. You're the reason we're here. And while the season for Indiana basketball may not be going the way we want it to, man, we're having a lot of fun over here. So if you have not subscribed yet on the YouTube channel, please do that. It's free, helps us out, helps you out as well to become a part of this family here. So be sure that you do that. Like the video, comment down below on this, whatever you want to see, whatever you think about this episode. And if you're on any of your audio platforms, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So be sure that you subscribe on there as well and turn on notifications for every time you know that we post a new episode. Head coach Mike Woodson for Indiana basketball is just making horrible in-game decisions right now for this team, and it's hurting them. It's hurting them bad in these games, especially here in Big Ten play. That's what we're going to talk about today. Talk about those poor decisions, why they're negatively impacting this Indiana team. Also, let's try to find the leader on this team. Who in the world is going to step up? Because you can't put it all on head coach Mike Woodson. We'll talk about that today, and then we'll take a look at coach's comments after the Rutgers game and kind of see what he had to say following the loss. So that's what's on the schedule here for today's episode. Head coach Mike Woodson's got to be better, okay? He has to be better here because we've been seeing this now all season long. I feel like last year, a lot of these issues, a lot of these problems got covered up because of the talent that Indiana had, right? I mean, you got two guys playing in the NBA right now that were playing on this roster a year ago. So I think a lot of these issues that we're seeing and really the coaching problems and the coaching failures that we're seeing right now, and the mistakes that are being made were covered up from a year ago. This year, not so much. You're not seeing you're not seeing talent win out here because we can all agree Indiana has one of the most talented rosters in the Big Ten. But right now, that's not good enough. That's not enough. That is not good enough to overcome the bad decisions that are being made. What are those decisions? A lot of you know what they are. The biggest one to me is the substitutions in the games. Like, there is no consistency whatsoever right now with the substitutions for this Indiana team. And he got feisty, did head coach Mike Woodson. A lot of his post-game comments, we're going to get to those later on in the show. But just to give you one right now, he was asked on why 4 starters were subbed out at the same time. And here's what the head coach says. He says, I'm not going to sit here and answer that question when it comes to the fans or you. I elected to go by my bench, which I've done this season, and I've gotten some good results here and there. And tonight they didn't kill us, but they didn't let them back in the game. I thought we withstood it. The big shot at the half, I thought, gave them momentum going in, but this game was still back and forth. He said then X had his little fiasco where he gets kicked out, and that changed the game a little bit. At the 2-minute mark, we're down 2 possessions, and we foul. Then we come back, and we get an intentional foul. So that's the game pretty much, he says. Says now you're scrambling, trying to win down the stretch. We've got to be more solid. Says like we play at home, that's how we've got to play on the road, and I got to get us to do that. So he was asked about that substitution problem, and he decided he didn't want to answer it. He just said, no, I'm good. I'm not going to answer that for you, the media, or for you, the fan. I'll answer it. It's a dumb decision. It's a bad call to sub out your guys when you've gotten a lead. We saw this in the Auburn game. We saw it in this game. And I understand an earlier comment from Woodson that we'll get to later. He says you can't play them all 40 minutes. Yeah, you're right, coach. You can't play them all for 40 minutes. But your best players are your starting five, because right now on this roster, the drop-off from the starting five to everybody else outside of CJ Gunn for the last 2 games, the drop-off is significant. It's bad. It's an avalanche of a drop-off right now. You cannot afford to put your bench in for longer than 2 or 3 minutes at a time. I'm sorry, you cannot. They have not done anything to prove to me, to prove to you, and to prove to the head coach that they are good enough to withstand and withhold and hang in Big Ten games. They just can't do it. So I understand you're concerned about playing your guys for 40 minutes. And I'm looking at Kel'el Ware, Mackenzie Mbako, Malik Reneau, heck, even Trey Galloway and Xavier Johnson at times. You can't play them for 40 minutes. I get that. But you're going to have to step up. Somebody's going to have to step up and play 35, 36. I'm sorry. That's where we are. That's where we are with this team, because nobody behind them can play well enough consistently for this team to be a threat. You'll see a good game or good effort from Anthony Sparks every now and then. You'll see one from Anthony Walker Peyton Sparks, and Anthony Walker every now and then. You'll see one from, I can't even say Gabe Cupps. I haven't seen him score or do anything recently. He doesn't hurt you, but he's definitely not going to help you, right? And then CJ Gunn has kind of come on the scene late, but he's super up and down too. So who on the bench can you confidently put in and say, all right, starters, go get a rest. We're fine. We're gonna hold. That hasn't happened here. That doesn't happen. And so it's not unfair for Mike Woodson to be questioned about his substitutions. It's not unfair. He should not be offended by that question being asked. That rubs me the wrong way. I'll be honest with you. We saw it against Auburn. We didn't see it as much against Kansas. The starters played a ton in Kansas against that Kansas Jayhawks team. They did. I'll pull it up for you right now. I don't have it, but I will. They played a ton in that game against Kansas. And guess what? They almost won the stupid game. They did. They almost won because of that. Here's Indiana's minutes distribution in that game. Are you ready for this? Kel'el Ware played 39 minutes. 39 out of 40. Gabe Cupps, credit to him, he played 37. Of course, Xavier Johnson wasn't in at that point. Trey Galloway played 38. 38 minutes. So 3 of your 5 starters played 37, 38, and 39 minutes. Malik Reneau, Mackenzie Mbako played 24, 25. Banks and Walker played 16 each, and CJ Gunn played 5. So while you may not want to play them all the game, and you can't do that all the way through Big Ten play, some games you just have to play them more. And until somebody on the bench steps up, and until somebody proves that they can come in and help you and give you significant minutes, quit taking your guys out in close games. Quit taking them out when you get the lead. If they're tired, call timeouts. Intentional foul. Do something else besides saying, oh, hey, we're up by 5 or 7. All right, guys, go take a seat. You did a good job. They'll hold down the fort because the guys behind you can't do it. And the fact that he gets upset about being questioned about that really, really concerns me. And that doesn't even start to break into what's not happening in practice. The fact that this team has yet to get better game by game. We'll talk about that some more coming up in just a second here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Look, you shouldn't have to worry about buying tickets when you're going to your next concert, sporting event, theater, comedy show, whatever it may be. You shouldn't have to stress about that. And with Game Time, you don't have to. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Look, I've used Game Time numerous times since I've come on with Locked On. They've been a great partner for us. I've used Game Time for multiple sporting events, and I went to a comedy show a couple of weeks ago. Used Game Time, worked perfectly. In a city that I don't go to a ton, it worked out fantastic. It was everything I wanted it to be. Super fast, super easy, and the prices were fantastic. You get last-minute tickets, flash deals. They have zone deals. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. So be sure that you check out Game Time. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big time savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, I've got you here. Let's talk to you about our Locked On Sports Today here on YouTube. Our Locked On channels and our Locked On Podcast Network has launched a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week live stream called Locked On Sports Today. You can go and check it out. I highly recommend you do so. Give them some of your time. Subscribe to their channel. They do literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop sports coverage from all of our Locked On shows and our Locked On experts. Go check them out. They would appreciate it. You can subscribe to Locked On Sports Today. You can also subscribe here to Locked On Hoosiers as we welcome you back into the show. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel as well. We would be very grateful for that as we are continuing to grow, ladies and gentlemen. We are growing here on Locked On Hoosiers. At the time of this recording, we are at 1620. That's right, 1,620. So we are just growing pretty steadily here on the channel if you're on YouTube. So be sure that you subscribe, like the video. If you are on audio, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So be sure you keep that in mind as well. Talking more Indiana basketball, talking about the coaching decisions from head coach Mike Woodson. We're going to get into the leaders on this team and where in the world we can find some, because I think these conversations and these topics kind of come together a little bit. And we talked a lot about how Mike Woodson in-game coaching decisions just have not been good. They haven't been good and they haven't been consistent. That's my biggest problem is one game you play the starters, you almost beat a top 5 team in the country. Then in a game like this against Rutgers, you complain that you can't play them all the time. You sub out random players and put in random players. There's absolutely no trends here. And you lose the basketball game because your bench blows it, because nobody on there is reliable right now. But the other thing that I think Mike Woodson is doing wrong, and look, I will say this. There is a reason I'm a podcaster. There's a reason that I do radio. There's a reason that I'm in this profession and I'm not on the sidelines coaching a basketball team. I'm not claiming to know more than him. I'm not claiming to know more than any other coach or any coach. I'm not a coach. I'm not claiming to know any more than them. But I think we can all agree that it's very frustrating to watch these things happen. And it's frustrating to also watch the fact that this team, and I said this a lot on the show yesterday in a very heated reaction episode that you all loved, and I appreciate that. It's very frustrating to watch this team not improve, to not get any better, and all the problems to remain. Nothing has gotten better. Your defensive three-point, your three-point defense, that's better. Three-point defense has not gotten any improvement, hasn't shown any progress this season. You've taken a step back in the rebounding category, taking a step back consistently in turnovers when it comes to improving. You had a 4-turnover game. You back it up with nearly 20. Like, that is what's so upsetting and frustrating here is I don't know what they're focusing on. I don't know what they're working on. Transition game, not existent. When they do it, it works. When they do it, that's Indiana some of their best offense. But guess what? They don't push that in the games. They don't work on that in the games. They don't do that in the games. And what that tells me, it tells me if you don't do it in the games, means you're not doing it in practice. And if you're not doing it in practice, you're not going to do it in games. That's a vicious cycle right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is how that works. You practice like you play, and then you'll play like you practiced. And what this tells me about this Indiana team is we're struggling to understand the game. We are not working on our transition game. And our offense, what are we doing when it stalls? What happens when the defense collapses because Kel'el Ware is the only big man on the floor and everybody else is sitting on the bench because they can't play the whole game and we have nowhere to go? What are we doing? What are we practicing? Absolutely nothing. That's your answer. It's nothing. So that is extremely frustrating. And that leads me into my next point here is who's going to step up on this team? Who's going to be the leader for this Indiana team? Because as much as we've been going at Woody here, you cannot put it all on him. And I saw some people in the Indiana beat and even some of you, the fans, talking about this as well. Somebody has to be a leader on this team. And we mentioned this on the show yesterday. A player has to help here, right? This is where the team comes together as some experienced young men in college basketball, trying to be adults, young adults here, and say, look, we've got some serious problems. We've got to fix them. And we need to help out our head coach. We need to help out our coaching staff. We need to try and be better for us, for Indiana, for the fans, for the state, for the program. We should want to be better as players. And I don't know if that's happening. I don't know if that's happening. I'll say this. I heard Gabe Cupps in his post-game press conference after the Auburn game down in Atlanta when I was able to be there in attendance. And he had some really good things to say. He talked about accountability and effort and execution. He used all the right words and he sounded really good. So where is that? And I know that's hard to do as a backup point guard, especially with X coming back, but where is that type of leadership? Where is that vocal leader going to be? Because if nobody steps up, if nobody helps, if nobody takes charge as a player and be the leader of the players, you're never going to improve. You're never going to be what you want to be. If there's not a player in that locker room that's enforcing what the coaches tell them and holding others accountable and keeping everybody bonded together, right? If you don't have that guy in the locker room, that gel, that heart, if you don't have that player, you're never going to be a good team. You're never going to break through. You're never going to improve. And who is that player? I don't see one. I don't see one. I thought it was going to be X. I thought it was going to be Xavier Johnson, but he can't keep his own body parts to himself. Nevertheless, trying to keep his own team together, right? It could have been Trey Galloway. He's definitely not it. Are you really going to rely on a sophomore, one of your sophomore bigs, to be it? Maybe so. Maybe it is one of them. Shoot, maybe it's the freshman, Mackenzie Mbako. I don't know. But if Gabe Cupps, your freshman backup point guard, if he's the most vocal leader on this team, then get them all out. You've got major problems, buddy, if that's your biggest leader on the team, your backup point guard as a freshman. That is bad and a horrible sign. So I ask you, who do you think the leader is? Who should be the leader? But the problem is we don't determine that. We can't determine that. We can choose. We can choose who we want. We can choose who we think. But we don't determine that. That's not how this works. That's where somebody within that locker room steps up and they decide, I'm going to help get this team to the promised land. They don't have that right now. And I think Mike Woodson needs that. I think Coach Woodson desperately needs that assistance because I think he's proven he can't do it on his own. Him and this staff are not doing what they need to do. If they don't get some assistance from the players in a leadership teacher role, I think it's going to be a long season here in Indiana, here in Bloomington. I think it's going to be a really long season if the players don't help out the coaches. You see coaches helping out the players, but it's time for Mike Woodson to get some assistance from his own guys within that locker room. Coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look at head coach Mike Woodson's comments following the Rutgers game, including some heated comments towards the media, not wanting to really answer for some of the problems. We'll talk about all that coming up in just a second here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. We had talked yesterday, if you place $5 on Indiana, you didn't have to win. You still would have got the $150 in bonus bets, and guess what? They didn't win, but you still would have gotten your $150 anyway. So I hope you did. And if you didn't, you have another chance to do it. Indiana plays tomorrow against Minnesota. So put $5 in, bet it on Indiana, or you can bet on Minnesota if you want to. FanDuel's going to give you $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's easy. That's all you do. You can't beat that with FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Welcome back into our final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. Shout out to all of our everydayers as we are growing on the video, on the audio side of things. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So be sure you're sharing this with all your friends, family, coworkers. We do appreciate you helping us grow this wonderful fan base and family here at Locked On Hoosiers. After the Rutgers game, so following what was one of the worst performances we've seen all year, and a game that I said it can't get much worse, what did head coach Mike Woodson have to say? We always try to do this when we can, when we have the time between games to kind of look at what head coach Mike Woodson said about the game and kind of relate it back to what we've been talking about and compare and contrast and try to pick something out of this and see how the head coach is feeling. And man, he wasn't happy. Obviously, he was not very happy. We talked about the comments he had about when pulling the starters, and he pretty much said, I'm not going to sit here and try to defend myself. I don't have to, which, again, I'm not a fan of. But he had a question on why he thinks Indiana struggles so much with free throw shooting. And this is another answer. It's one of those smart answers, and you-know-what answers, where he says, if I had a magic pill that I could give them about making free throws, I would. He said, that's all mental. I played sports. I played basketball. And when you get fouled and you've got to go to the line, they're free. So you should feel good about yourself and go up and knock them down and punish them for fouling. We just didn't do that tonight, and that's unacceptable. He said, we've got to get better and make it free. You're not going to beat teams in the Big Ten doing that. You're just not. And Coach Woodson, you would be right about that. And I do like that terminology and mentality, though, where if you step up, make them pay, right? Make them pay for fouling you. And they are free throws. I mean, how many times have you heard that in your lifetime? It's free. They should make them all, right? Same thing with NFL kickers. They should make them all, right? You practice it all the time. But you still got to make them at a high, consistent rate. And when you go on the road and you shoot 26%, you're going to lose every time. 4 of 15. I mean, if you make literally, you lost by 9. You lost by 9 in this game. And guess what? That's how many free throws you could have made to get all the way back into this game. I mean, you missed 11 of them. You missed 11 free throws. Make 9 of them, you're in a tie game. Even if you still miss 2, you still have a chance to win the basketball game. But I do like that mindset of, hey, you fouled me, step up here with confidence, and I'm going to knock them down and make you pay. But that's a tough dog mentality. Does anybody on this team have that right now? I don't know. We were just talking about finding a leader, and I don't think Indiana has that either. So, again, another upset Mike Woodson in the postgame press conference. Other questions, he was asked about the offensive rebounds. He said it's always a problem. He said we won a game against Ohio State, losing the glass by 20. And you say, how in the heck can you win a game like that? But it was the other areas where we were pretty good. And he's right? We had talked about that after the Ohio State game where, yes, you got out-rebounded by a lot. And, yeah, you gave up some second-chance points, but you forced turnovers, and you won the points off turnovers battle by a pretty wide margin. And they balanced themselves out, and that allowed Indiana to win a close game. Talked about the struggles on the road at Rutgers, a place I thought we were going to go in and be able to get a win. Me personally, I don't know what he thought, but I personally thought we were going to win that. He also says, here we go, that word consistency we use quite a bit on this show. He says, what can be done to get more consistency from game to game from this team? And he says, work. Continue to work. That's all you can do. He says, you've got to continue to work. So we go home. We'll go home and go to practice tomorrow and get ready for Minnesota. We have to continue to work to get better, and I've got to get them over the hump. I've got to figure that out. And then that leadership conversation we had, he had some comments about that when Xavier Johnson left the floor. He says, well, I expect our seniors, Walker, X, and Gallo. He says, Anthony Leal has been great. No complaints there. Those three guys are seniors. They got to help it lead. He says, and the road is different than playing at home, and there's no doubt about that. I thought we came out with good intentions. We played hard during some spurts of the ball game. But again, missed free throws, 19 offensive boards, blah, blah, blah. It keeps going on. I mean, just didn't really address anything about X leaving the game with leadership. And obviously, Mike Woodson's still looking for a leader too. He's still looking for somebody to step up and help him out. He's still looking for that. So hell, if we're looking for it and he's looking for it, we've got an issue here. We've got a big problem. Indiana's got to find that guy. And I don't know how you find that in almost the second week of January, halfway through the first month of the year, halfway through the first month of conference play. I don't know how you find that at this point. That's completely player-led. But Mike Woodson's concerned. Talked about him getting over the hump. Yeah, that was supposed to be done back in non-conference play, dude. This isn't time to do that. Thankfully, you've got a lot of games, but, man, it's tough to get over the hump, in air quotes, in conference play. The Big Ten's no joke. Big Ten's no joke. This isn't the time you want to be trying to figure it out and get over the hump and try to get off the downward spiral. No, you want to be on your way up and consistently getting better each and every game. That's what good teams do. That's what great programs do year in and year out. And Indiana's not on that track right now. So to wrap all this up, Indiana, if they don't start fixing things and head coach Mike Woodson doesn't change some things, we're in trouble. We're in big, big trouble here. He's an old school coach. And he's an old school guy. We know that. But he's going to have to adjust here. He has to change some things because what we're doing is not working. The substitutions we're doing are not working in the game. Whatever we're practicing before games is not working. And whatever leadership styles we're having ain't working either because nobody has taken that role yet on this team. Those things have to change right now before you play Minnesota, before you play Purdue, and before you get into the rest of your conference schedule. If you don't change those things, Mike Woodson, this is going to be a bad end of the year. I can guarantee it for the Indiana Hoosiers. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. Again, subscribe to the channel. It's free. It helps you. It helps me. Liking the video does that as well here on YouTube. If you're on the audio, we appreciate you being there as well. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Numbers are just soaring, folks. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. Audio, video. Follow us on X as well. You can just search at Locked On Hoosiers. Comment down below what you thought about the video, your thoughts about Indiana basketball as we get into the Minnesota game. We'll have a preview episode go up for you tomorrow. We'll have a take about that. Don't you worry as the Hoosiers try to get back on track again and try to get another win in Big Ten play. So until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.